Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Making Waves at Sea Level. My name is Thom Singer, and I have been hosting this podcast now for over a decade. And the idea is to talk about ways that you can shake things up, recreate your career, help guide your company. And in the beginning days, we actually did this show as a lot of interviews. For the last year or so, because I now run an association and I've got my business as a speaker and a trainer, I've got a lot of things going on. So this podcast isn't being produced as often as I would like, although my goal for 2025 is to up the frequency back to once a week for this show. However, we do it when we can and we share ideas that we can. And today we're going to talk about business development for lawyers. Now, if you're not a lawyer, don't leave because the tips work for you no matter who you are and what you do if you're trying to build a career, especially if you work in the services industry and you're trying to sell to companies to offer them your product or your service that is really going to make a difference to the bottom line of their company. So some of you may know I spent over 5 years as the business development and marketing director for 2 AmLaw 100 law firms for their Austin and their Dallas offices. Now, it's been about 20 years since I actually day-to-day worked in that role. But as soon as I left the law firms, one of the things that I started doing was coaching lawyers and speaking at law firm retreats and at partner retreats, talking about this whole idea of building your reputation, your brand, what I now call human interaction, HI, in an AI world. Let's face it, all kinds of industries are going to be impacted by the changes that are happening with AI. And the practice of law is going to be ones that are disrupted the most. So many things are already changing with the technology tools that are entering into the legal world. But I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see all kinds of changes. And so that's why I have been speaking more at law firms and I've been doing more one-on-one coaching with lawyers. And so I wanted this podcast to focus on that. And I really have 3 ideas for you if you're trying to build your practice. I often get involved coaching people one-on-one when someone is either a senior associate and they're on track to be a partner and they're a little worried about meeting their numbers, or someone who has made partner in the last couple of years who looks at their bottom line and realize they need to become a rainmaker. They need to start building a solid, sustainable book of business. And I talk to them about a whole bunch of things. We usually run through 5 meetings where we help them set up a list of people that they're going to cultivate relationships with, and then we come up with a business plan, and then we set up the tools into place to make sure that they're going to execute on that, not just for 2 weeks after our 6-month coaching sessions are over. However, something they're going to do for the rest of their career, because business development won't happen by accident. In any profession, but especially for lawyers, you have to make it a priority. Because one of the problems is lawyers will be like, yeah, right on. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do business development. I'm going to write some articles. I'm going to find some conferences to speak at. I'm going to take clients to lunch or golfing or whatever. And then they get busy practicing law and they put the business development aside and they don't worry about it until they realize they don't have that much work. And then they double down and they go out chasing business until they get a case and then they let it go again. And that creates peaks and valleys throughout the numbers that they're putting in every single year for their billables and the amount of clients that they've originated. But here's the thing. You don't want peaks and valleys over a 30 or 40 year career, because some of those valleys can last longer than you want them to. So what I want to teach for lawyers is to have consistency in this. And today on this podcast, I'm just going to give you 3 tips. If you want to know more, I'm always willing to talk to anybody, especially if you're looking for a speaker for your firm meeting, or if you're looking for somebody to work with one-on-one, or sometimes, and this has to be the right fit, the firm has to have a real progressive, positive attitude. Sometimes I'll actually work with a whole group of lawyers from the same firm, like 10 lawyers at a time, helping them sort of set this up. I'll come in and do a consulting to get everybody set with the same ideas moving forward. But again, that has to be a firm that is really future looking. So let me know if I'm the right fit to do any of that. And now let me give you the 3 tips that I have for you today. Number 1, if you pay attention to human interaction, if you invest in people, if you show up in your community, if you try to serve the business groups that are supporting, the areas where you practice, then number 1, you're going to strengthen your client relationships. Clients want you to be involved in the community, and we build relationships through shared experiences. So if you're participating where your clients are participating, boom, you're going to be able to strengthen those relationships, Number one, because you'll be attending the same events they are and you'll be sharing those experiences. But even if they're not there, they know you're there and you're out supporting the community. And most people, when they're surveyed, agree that they want to do business with people who are supporting the community. So if you get involved, if you double down on this, it's going to strengthen your client relationships. Number two, it's going to expand the influence and the reputation for you as a lawyer and for your firm. Let's face it, the practice of law, especially if you're practicing in a business legal situation, business law, it's a relationship business. It's one of those businesses where people have to have heard of you. They have to have heard of your firm. Reputation and brand really, really matters. But here's the thing. When someone is looking to switch corporate lawyers because they're going to go through a merger or a public offering, or whether they have a big case and it's litigation, it's kind of bet the company level litigation. If they're going to put this out to bid, they're only going to talk to 2 or 3 law firms. And think about the city where you live. How many competitors do you have just locally, not to mention people throughout your state? There's hundreds of options that companies can turn to, but they're only going to go to 3. And so your goal, if you want a successful, sustainable career, you don't have to worry about sales and closing deals. You just have to focus on, how do I make sure that I and my team, we get on more short lists? Because if they're going to interview only 3 firms and you're not one of those 3 firms, what do you think the chances are you'll get the business? Yeah, the answer is 0. And so if you want to get the business, you got to show up on that short list. We can talk more at a different time about when you're on the short list, how do you actually build excitement and close the sale? But if you're not on the list, you're never going to get the business. So you have to be working at building relationships, having that human interaction in your local community, in the verticals of the industries you serve, etc. If you're the best kept secret in the legal business, you're leaving money on the table. And the one thing I know from working with hundreds and hundreds of lawyers, most lawyers don't like to leave money on the table. You want your shot. You want your opportunity to be able to pitch for the business. So you got to be thinking, how do I get on more short lists? And the way you do that is you expand your influence and your brand through how you engage in your community. And the third tip for today is, when you're doing this, and so are your coworkers, you're driving growth. The more people who are engaged in those communities, the more people are going to see your firm and have heard of your firm. And you're going to be able to drive growth for your own practice, but you're also going to be able to drive business for the entire firm. You can't just rely on one rainmaker who everybody knows in your community, because they could leave the firm, they could get sick, they could die, they could retire. There's all kinds of things. So if you're part of a firm, you need to make sure that everybody is pulling their weight. Don't just say, well, Becky's really good at bringing in business. You have to be good at bringing in business, but so do the partners in every office down the hall and all the senior associates who work for you. This needs to be a group effort. And one of the things I tell firms is, do an inventory. What are the ways to be involved in the community? What are the business groups? And then assign people in your firm to be very involved with those groups. Each individual lawyer only needs 1 or 2 organizations that they support. But if you have 3 or 4 people assigned to every single organization and they participate all the time, anywhere in the community someone goes, they're going to see 2, 3, 4 people from your firm, and they're going to be like, oh my God, well, clearly this is a firm that has to be on that short list. So you want to drive that growth through being present and involved in the community. So strengthen the existing relationships, expand your influence, and drive growth. If those 3 things excite you, and you're a lawyer, or heck, you're in any industry, today's the day to embrace it. Today's the day to say, I'm all in and I'm going forward with this. So thank you for listening to this episode of Making Waves at Sea Level, or if you're watching the video on YouTube, thanks for watching. Either way, I hope that you've been inspired, whether you're a lawyer or not, by the fact that if you just take little steps over the course of the next 3, 4, 5 years, you're going to raise your visibility. You're going to have more human interaction in this AI world. You're going to have that HI down, which means you're going to have a really, really good career. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time right here on Making Waves at Sea Level.